of his various elucidatory experiments on his constatations, having become interested in this, also participated in these further researches of his. Well then, after long and detailed researches, this group of learned three-brained beings of your planet first became aware and categorically convinced that almost all the cosmic results observed around them, which are actualized in the course of their manifestness in external transitory states, perceived by the organs of beings in some or other definite form, always have 7 independent aspects. As a result of the conscious labors of these several learned three-brained beings of your planet, that branch of almost normal science then arose and began to grow on the continent Atlantis under the name of Tazaluri no, the sense of which meant the 7 aspectness of every whole phenomena. But when that continent perished, and absolutely nothing survived from this branch of genuine science, then again, during the course of very many centuries, the beings of this planet knew nothing about this sacred cosmic law. Evidently, this branch of science on the continent Atlantis was so widely known that it was not found necessary to include anything about it in legomenism, as was usually done, as I've already told you, by the learned beings of the continent Atlantis, for all those notions, the knowledge of which they wished to transmit unchanged to beings of future generations. If a legomenism concerning this branch of science had also existed, then something or other would certainly have survived of this knowledge, as had survived of other knowledge attained by the beings of Atlantis through those who were by chance saved after the loss of that continent. The knowledge concerning the sacred Heptaparaparshinokh was again known only after many, many of their centuries, thanks to 2 great terrestrial learned beings, the brothers Chun Kil Tez and Chun Tro Pel, who later became saints, and who are now on that holy planet Purgatory where we recently were. Do you remember, I already told you that on the continent of Asia there was a country, Maral Placi, and that a king existed there by the name Gurdjieff, a descendant of that learned member of the Society of Akaldans, who had gone there from Atlantis for the observation of all kinds of natural phenomena of their planet. Just that same king, who had invented for his subjects the wise tale already mentioned by me in order to save them from the pernicious habit of chewing the seeds of the flower Gulgulian. Well then, to the grandson of this king Canutzion, after the arising of an heir, who later also became king over the beings of this group, there arose just these same 2 results of the male sex, twins, the elder of whom was called Chun Kil Tez, and the younger Chun Tro Pel. The word Chun, then in the country Maral Placi, meant prince. Owing on the one hand to the fact that the environment of these 2 brothers, direct descendants of one of the chief members of the Great Learned Society, happened to be arranged correspondingly for their preparatory age, and on the other hand that they themselves tried not to allow the atrophy of the hereditary inherency, which they, as in general all newly arising 3-brained beings of this planet have, to crystallize the data for engendering in themselves the power to actualize being particle duty, and also in consequence of the fact that the affirming source of the causes of their arising, that is, their, as is called, father, decided to destine their responsible existence for the field of learning, and took all corresponding measures for their preparation for this. Then, already from the very beginning of their responsible age, they almost became such as 3-brained beings everywhere on the planets of our great megalocosmos become, who chose the same aim. That is to say, those who carry out all their studied researches not for the satisfaction of their what are called vainglorious, proud, and self-loving weaknesses, as is done by the beings there, particularly the contemporary ones who choose the same field for themselves, but for the attainment of a higher gradation of being. At the outset, they became, as is said there, learned specialists in medicine, and afterwards learned in general. The period of their preparatory age and the early years of their responsible existence were spent in the town Gobe, in the country Maral-Plessis. But when this part of the surface of your planet began to be buried under sand, they were both among the number of those refugees who went east. This group of three-brained beings, refugees from the country Maral-Plessis, among whom were also these two twin brothers, later great learned beings, crossed the eastern heights of Maral-Plessis and settled on the shores of a great water space. There was afterwards formed from them a settled group of these terrestrial three-brained beings still existing today, which, as well as the country which it inhabits, is now called China. Well then, in this new place of permanent existence called China, these same two brothers were the first to constate and to cognize after the loss of the continent Atlantis the fundamental cosmic law of the sacred Heptaparaparshinokh. It is in the highest degree an interesting and curious circumstance that the initial source for this constatation of theirs was the totality of cosmic substances localized in just that same surplanetary formation, which is now called there Papa Varun, or as it is still called, Poppy. And owing to the implanting of the habit of chewing the seeds of this poppy, their great-grandfather, the great King Canutian, first invented his, as already mentioned by me, religious teaching. There were evidently transmitted by inheritance to these two great terrestrial learned beings from their great-grandfather, the great King Canutian, in addition to the ability of well considering and cognizing their being duty in relation to beings around them similar to themselves, also an interest in and a passion for the study of this product, which has always been for your favorites one of the innumerable harmful means which have brought their psyche, already enfeebled without this, to its ultimate degeneracy. In order that you may better represent to yourself and well understand why just such a small planetary formation as I mentioned, named Papa Varun or Poppy, was the cause of the constatation by these great terrestrial learned beings of that most great cosmic law, you must first of all know that on all planets, for the purposes of transformation of common cosmic substances during the process of Irani-Ranu-Manj, there arise, among all kinds of surplanetary and intraplanetary formations in general, as well as among formations called flora in particular, three classes of formations. The formations belonging to the first class are called Unastralnian arisings. Those belonging to the second class, Ochchatralnian arisings. And those belonging to the third class, Polormedechtian arisings. Through the Unastralnian arisings, there are transformed in their evolutionary or involutionary processes